Thank you so much for joining us today. We are glad you're here. My name is Irmina and I lead product marketing here at OneSignal, and I'll be your host today. We're so excited to welcome you to our 2026 Customer Engagement webinar, Owning Attention in the AI Filtered World. For today, we'll start with a few key insights from this year's State of Customer Engagement report. This is based on data from over 500 mobile and product leaders, plus benchmarks from more than 200,000 apps. Then I'll bring in our panel, the most exciting part, to talk about what this actually looks like in practice. And then we'll open up to your questions. All right, let's get into it. The first finding from this report really confirms something that we have been seeing in customer engagement for a while. AI is changing your reach. And I want to start here because this sets the context for everything else in the report. So, talking to marketeers and product owners, we have learned that 48% of teams say they're already concerned about AI filtering what users see, and 17% is already seeing that this is affecting their deliverability. So this isn't something that is coming later in the future, it's already happening. And what is changing is that platforms and operating systems such as iOS are starting to decide what shows up first. What shows up at all, they start summarizing messages before even the users see them. So now there's a layer that didn't exist in the past before brands and their customers, which is AI deciding which message is worth seeing and which message should never be shown. So what this means is that sending messages alone doesn't guarantee that messages will be seen. And if we think about the premise of customer engagement and all the strategies, they were built historically on this idea that if we send a message, people will see it. And that's the part that's changing. And what this really means is that attention isn't something you get by default anymore. So you have to earn it each time. That's why building relationships with customers, staying relevant and consistent is very important. And also making sure that we create consistent experiences for our customers across channels. And the question for marketeers and product teams becomes not just did my message send, but did it deserve to be seen? So now let's go to the next slide and look at relevance over volume. So when performance starts to drop, what teams are actually doing? That was one of the biggest questions we asked in our report when we were interviewing the teams. And the most common responses were improving timing and reducing frequency. This meant really focusing on moments that matter and creating experiences for the users. Only a smaller group said increasing volume, which was very interesting from the findings, and I think that's a very important shift. So the instinct used to be if something isn't working, send more. Now it's becoming if something isn't working, make it more relevant. So it's again about building trust with the user, not sending more messages, not blasting messages. And that shift from volume to relevance is a big theme you'll see throughout the data from this report, and we'll touch upon it in the discussion as well. And what's interesting is that isn't just a strategy shift. We need to start thinking about customer engagement differently. So our mindset has to shift as well. And teams are performing well. They aren't just trying to push harder, they're trying to be more intentional, more relevant when and why they show up. So now let's go to the next slide everyone has been waiting for, and this is not a secret anymore, and our findings also confirm that AI is the new gatekeeper. And this is how we think about what changed structurally. So it used to be pretty direct. You send a message, your user sees it. Now there is a system in between that is deciding what actually gets through. And the system is learning from behavior. So when users open, what they ignore, what they dismiss. So over time, your messages are building a kind of track record. It's almost like a credit score. If you are relevant, the more likely you are to show up. If you're not, then you get filtered out more often. And what's interesting here to remember is that it is a compounding effect. So every message that you send matters a little bit more than it used to. And because every interaction is fitting the system, you're either building trust with it or you're slowly training it to deprioritize you. That's why consistency and relevance become so important over time, and having data and understanding your users is also um, very important for driving the communications. Now let's go to the next one, which is also very interesting. Um, let's look at the behavior-driven messaging, and this is probably the most actionable part of the report. When you compare event-triggered messaging to standard or untargeted messaging, the difference is pretty significant across every channel. So on mobile, push event-triggered messages see around 4.38 click-through rates compared to 0.48 for untargeted, which is pretty significant. And we see the same pattern on email, web push as well. We also observe that 88% of teams using event-based messaging report higher engagement, with many seeing double-digit gains, which was also worth noticing. And the reason is actually very simple. The message is tied to something that user did. It showed up at the right time, the right moment, it feels relevant, and it's not interruptive. And that's increasingly what it takes to get attention. It's not about sending more messages, it's about sending the messages that actually belong in the moment, creating the experiences for the customer that they are willing to engage with. And when you get this right, the performance difference is pretty significant as well. Now let's talk briefly where things are going with our next trend. 45% of teams are already planning to adopt RCS, or as we like to call it here, and one signal, a really cool SMS. And what's interesting is how they're thinking about it. So it's less about broadcast channel and more as a way of creating ongoing interactive experiences. So instead of just sending messages out, it becomes more of a conversation that lives in the inbox. And notice here that it's not replacing push or email. Those still play a very important role in your customer engagement communications, but it's filling the gap in the middle of the journey. So when you want to keep engagement going without requiring someone to open the app. So when you think about it in different terms, it's almost like having an app experience within an SMS, or what used to be an SMS, and now is shifting towards RCS, evolving. And this shift towards more conversational, more persistent messaging is something that we're starting to see across channels, and it's not just something that is typical for RCS. So it's less about one-off messages, as we mentioned, and it's more about building ongoing relationships with the users. And we'll come back to that in the panel discussion. We already established that AI is raising the bar for engagement. We also ask teams what they believe will actually help them earn attention as AI filtering increases. And the top answers were understanding users' behavior, which was very interesting. So data analytics and engagement platforms that help users help capture user data and translate that in actionable steps for marketeers and product teams. And what was interesting was not more channels, not more volume, but the behavior that was the most important for the teams. And if we're thinking about it, it actually makes sense. It's if the system deciding what gets shown is optimizing for relevance, then the teams that understand the user best are the ones that are winning with their customer engagement, and are set up for success as AI is increasingly filtering the messages. And it's less about reaching more people, it's less about sending more messages, more volume, and it's more about showing up at the right moment for the right person and staying relevant as a brand. And that's what's interesting. It's also not far ahead from everything else. So behavior is clearly the unlock here because once you understand the intent, timing, and context, everything else becomes easier to get your messaging and customer engagement right. And now let's move to the most interesting finding in the report, or one of the most interesting findings of the report, less volume and more impact. We observed that 63% of teams using cross-channel journeys say that they get better results while sending fewer messages, and 78% report higher relevance from those users. So this isn't a trade-off between doing less and performing better. It's actually the opposite. So where messaging is sequenced well, when it adapts, when it stops at the right time, it performs better. So the global shift from sending more to sending better is very obvious throughout the report. And that's really what orchestration enables. So when we think about it, orchestration allows to be more thoughtful about how messages connect over time and not just individually. So it's being relevant and creating trust with customers, building relationships over time. So instead of repeating the same message, you're actually building progression. So now let's look at the key takeaway from the report before we move to the panel. The first one, AI is already shaping what users see. This is happening now, not later. Behavioral messaging consistently outperforms batch messaging. RCS, or really cool SMS, I would like to call it, is emerging as a new layer in the messaging stack, bringing enough experience into your RCS box. And overall, fewer, more relevant messages tend to drive better results. As all of this is based on what teams are actually seeing in their programs today, so these aren't ideas for the future. These are patterns that are already showing up in real data. So with that, let's shift from data to what actually works in practice. Now, let's get into the part I have been really looking forward to. First, welcome our panelists. We're really excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. And I'll have each of you introduce yourselves, just a bit about your role and and I'm going to give you also a question to get us started. As you introduce yourselves, I would love you to share what's a message you have received recently that made you pause and think, wow, that was well done. And if nothing comes to mind, I'm also curious how many unread notifications are sitting on your phone right now. Yarin, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure, I'll go. So, hello, my name is Yarin. I've been working in the gaming industry for the past 11 years, and I've been with Candiver, the creators of Matchmasters, for the past 5 years. During this time, I've been assuming the many roles, live ops manager, CRM manager, and for the past year, I've been product manager for Matchmasters. And I have a great story about a push notification that I received that I remember fondly. On my phone, I have an app of a very big bank that I have an account in. And a few years ago, I think it was during winter time, it was really storming outside. And I got a push notification that was clearly was sent to me by mistake. And the reason I know is because it only had 4 words in it. Test Zohar to Jenny. And it made me smile because it made me realize, like, okay, I'm not the only one who make mistakes and said like irrelevant stuff and things by mistakes to our users. And it also made me realize it felt like, one of the best practices is personalization. When you address players using their name, it gives it a more personal feeling. And it gave me that sense because I felt the message was sent to me in a personal way because I know the names of the people who sent it. And there is a comeback. They sent another push not long after, but I tell
Mhm.
you how it ended up if we have time in the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Yarin, and what a great story. I think it'll be very difficult to beat that message. So, David, you're next.
Cool. Thanks, Romina. Yeah, it's great to be here. My name's David Rainica. I'm the founder of Wallabout Collective. We're a full-service digital agency and a premier partner of OneSignal. We handle most partner-led onboarding on behalf of OneSignal customers in North America. And yeah, one of my favorite ski companies, J Skis. I live in Maine, so I ski quite a bit. A local ski company in Vermont, I follow for quite a bit. They sort of their specialty is releasing exclusive skis every year. And I am just an absolute sucker for every single message they send me. My favorite is when they send out a message every year with a special password to preview next year's skis. So yeah, it just makes me feel special when I get this exclusive little password to enter on a special site, and I get to see the next year's designs, which will be never made again. So yeah, that's something I really look forward to every year. But yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, David. And don't we all just want to feel special when we compete with our brands? Paris, up to you.
Thanks, Nirmina. Hi, everyone. My name is Barış. I am Associate UA Director in Gram Games and Zynga. I've been in Zynga for 6 years now. My main responsibility is user acquisition, so I bring people to the game. But 3 years ago or so, I also took over lifecycle marketing
Mhm.
responsibility as well, and that kind of covers push notifications, in-app messages, and everything. So I've been working with OneSignal and trying to create customized journeys for our users uh, through OneSignal as well. In terms of the push notification, I thought about this a bit, but I receive quite a lot because I download a lot of games. I accept all the push notifications, so
Mhm.
I get a lot. I can't really think of like one that kind of stood out to me, at least in the recent time. But I have also quite a lot of unread notifications. I don't want to share it because I think like especially like my email is I think around 5 digits, and even my SMS is around 3 digits. So I also tend to ignore quite a lot, although I try to like check the competition quite often. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Paris. So maybe we'll stay with you for a second and start with the first question. So you're focused on bringing users in at scale. You mentioned acquisition, and we saw in the report that 75% of teams say push has the biggest impact on retention in those first 30 days. But there's always that tension between acquiring users at scale and making sure that those first interactions actually stick. So, how do you think about the handle from acquisition into the early experience? And more simply, what have you seen actually make someone stick in those first moments?
Yeah, like the benefit of like me looking at both user acquisition and also the engagement side on the game is that we can really tailor the experience from like seeing the ad
Mhm.
to download to the first experience and also even like the first messages we send to the users. So what we try to do is we generally try to make the experience quite seamless. We have ads that like kind of cater towards different motivations. So some people, for example, like the challenge. For them, we kind
Mhm.
of try to create an experience that's a bit more challenge focused in the beginning of their user journey. So instead of like going over everything like basic stuff one by one, we kind of give them a bit more time to explore and then figure out how things work out. Um, and generally, we try to also kind of shift that to the communication as well. And what we've seen in the past and what we kind of like keep trying to do is in order to switch from first session into opt-in to pushed and also other communications, we try to showcase areas where they can actually gain value from push notifications or in-app messages where like if they opt in. So, and that way, we can kind of create like initially like a transaction relationship between like us sending push notifications that are beneficial to the user, and that kind of cover either tips about the game or times where there's like new stuff happening or new gifts that they can receive. That way, we kind of complete the loop because initially we start to like we bring the user, we customize the experience, and then we showcase the value that we can provide with pushes, and then we kind of bring the users back hopefully with the push notifications as well.
Thank you so much, Barry. So I can see, like you mentioned, starting communications as a transactional communication with the push, but then showcasing the value and starting to build relationships over time, keeping the messages very relevant, which also showcase the findings of the report. So thank you so much for sharing. And now let's move to Yarin. I'd love your take from the product side. So when someone opens your app or game for the first time, you really only have a short window to give them a reason to stay. What have you learned about what actually matters in that moment? And how has this shaped how you design the first experience? And maybe related to that, what's one thing your team changed in how you communicate with users that you wish you had done earlier?
Okay, so we created a new onboarding and tutorial experience. I think around 2 years ago, maybe we overhauled it. But we understood something for our players. The players that are coming are different types. Some of them are familiar and experienced in casual games and in match-3 mechanics, and others are completely new to it. And because of it, we want to give the player the opportunity or like the decision to either play the tutorial or ignore it completely or come back to it afterwards if they want to experience it. And the tutorial is built in a few levels, and with each level they learn new mechanics and like they get the understanding of the game. Okay, and one thing we want to create in those early stages is traction. So in order to do that, we need to understand what the players has experienced during this first session or in the first few sessions. And we want to address that when we talk to him through the push notification, let's say. So if he ignored the push notification, the tutorial completely, obviously it doesn't make sense to mention it in the message. But if he started it or if he completed it, it makes a lot of sense to talk about the mechanics that he learns for the tutorial or that he only have a few steps remaining in order to complete the tutorial. And that might be more engaging for him rather than sending him like a generic push notification that doesn't relate to what he experienced in those early stages of the game.
Also, I love the gamification of the user experience. And then what you're touching upon is also the importance of capturing the data so you can personalize the communications and the experience with the user. Thank you so much for sharing, Irene. And now, David, I'll bring you in here. So you get to see a lot of different teams close, and I'm very curious when it comes to those early moments, what's something that you keep seeing teams overcomplicate or miss? And then what's something you've seen work really well that maybe more teams should be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that teams that are most successful early on are ones that are doing a lot of self-reflection and using what is already available to them. One of our clients, Homemade Method, it's a sort of meal plan, healthy eating app that's sort of inspired by an influencer that we work with. And most of their content is sort of inspired by content that is being generated by their own Facebook community. So they have a premium tier that gives you access to a special Facebook group, and there's just a super interactive group of folks there, and they're constantly talking about what they're cooking and what's working out for them. And instead of trying to figure out what content to build, they're basically using the community to build the content strategy for them. And I think that's a really great way to go about things because you sort of just insert yourself into a conversation that's already going on, and you're really just taking advantage of what is already available to you. So yeah, I think that's what we've seen really successful is just sort of doubling down on what your own users are generating and things that you see that are working on a day to day with your own customers.
Mhm. By the way, it's actually similar on our side too. So we were looking at push notifications and we were sending quite a lot of push notifications, right? But then we started looking at what the users are actually engaging with and then created push notifications around that because we were like, okay, probably these are the things like the features that users are interested in. So why not let's talk about that as well in our communication. So it kind of creates like a loop where we foster like their interest and then they come back more and then kind of becomes they become more interested and they get to engage with the future features more. Yeah.
Yeah, and what a great example of building that stickiness with the brands and building habits that we mentioned as well. Now let's pick up on something that we saw in the data. So the report shows that 48% of teams are already concerned about AI filtering what gets seen, and 17% say it's already affecting deliverability. So Barish, maybe start with you. When timing really matters, how do you decide which moments are actually worth reaching out versus holding back?
From our side, it's actually quite easy because we have time limited events, limited offers in the game. So, and because of their time limited nature and because users know about them, that's one of the easier messaging to send to the users. And like those messages get quite a lot of engagement from them. But on top of that, what we started doing is we started using like a bit more prioritization on like one signal side and also capping the messaging. It kind of goes back to the slide again, actually, which I was smiling as I was looking at that because you were showing like what users, like what marketers are trying in order to increase their engagement. And I think we were trying like 60% of that pie. So, but what we started doing is limiting the communication as well. So make sure that like uh, at least like we don't send as much so that when we want to communicate, it's worth looking into and it's worth paying attention to because if we send 15 notifications every day, at some point like none of them are like same importance, right? Like and so we try to kind of uh, filter the communication based on importance and also segmentation is a big part of it too. So we try to segment based on user interest too. So if someone is interested in a certain feature, we try to talk more about that feature rather than something that they have never interacted with.
Yeah, thank you so much, Parish. So the old saying, more is better, it's not relevant anymore. It seems to be the opposite. And Yarin, David, I'm curious what you're thinking about this as well. Have you noticed anything with AI filtering and how being timely and relevant in reaching out versus holding back is balanced in your communications?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, go
Sorry,
for it,
go
Aaron.
ahead. No, go ahead. Go.
Okay, okay. Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of what Barris was saying, I mean, I think for us, we're trying to give people ways to opt in or out more on their own, free will. I would say like preference centers are really great. Um, I think also having a wider range of channels to communicate with, SMS, there's a super high open rate. Obviously, you have to be more delicate with how you use SMS. There's more regulations, there's more spam filters, things like that. But when you can gain that trust from your customer on those channels that I'd say were a lower priority, uh, um, at some point where I think now where email is being filtered more and things like that, we're thinking more about how SMS can be used. And I think also we're thinking about the marketing strategy more holistically. I think a lot of our customers are, they don't want to stop marketing at any point. But if you take a step back and think about the ebbs and flows of your business, maybe there's some seasonality that you can accept that there's going to be some downtimes where people don't want to hear from you as much. But when things pick back up, you're ready to sort of start communicating with them again. So yeah, I think it's about just finding a balance and being realistic about when people want to hear from you and giving them options as to what their preferred channel is. I think are some ways that we're kind of mixing into our strategy right now.
Yeah, thank you so much, David, for the overview. And for everyone, I just want to point out to a few concepts that we have also covered in the report that are reflecting this trend. So one of them is being relevant and building relationships with customers over time. But then the other one is having this holistic approach to customer engagement. So you are not thinking about channels in silos, but you're thinking about orchestration and communicating with the customer across different channels based on seasonality, as David mentioned, but also preferences of the user. Sometimes they have opt-ins, opt-outs for certain channels, or when filtering comes into email, you can lean on other channels to have some options for delivery as well. So you keep communication going independently on the channel. And Yarin, what's your take on it?
Yeah, so obviously I can relate to both David and Barish about what they said. And for us, the game LiveOps operates in a very in a global way. It's not player centric in the way that like if we start an event for the player base, we start it for all of them at the same time. And that creates like some difficulties because we have players from all over the world, right? And you want to keep the push notification, let's say that tellers give like the value proposition of there's an event going on right now, and I want you to know about that, and it's relevant for the player because we segmented it and we identified that this is something he might be interested in. But the issue might be that the event starts when it's in the middle of the night for that specific player. So we have to be cautious and maybe suppress those push notifications to those specific players where the event, even though it started and this is relevant at the moment, it might not be relevant for them because obviously they're sleeping. And if we'll send it later, they might already woken up and entered the game and saw the event started. So we have to be very thoughtful and careful about how we manage the push orchestration against the live ops operation that we have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yarin. And what you're bringing here is very relevant for global teams, especially is this geo-localization, making sure that the message gets delivered and at the right time, the right channel. And this time might be very different depending on the location. There's one thing that both you and David mentioned, and namely segmentation. And this was also one of the elements that we have explored during the research, how important it was. So, David, I'll come to you first as you are describing it. So, this idea that segments should have an expiration, otherwise relevance turns into fatigue. You mentioned seasonality or just depending on the preferences. How are you seeing teams think about that? And what does that actually look like in practice from your experience?
Um, yeah, that's definitely something that I think we are, yeah, getting better at understanding over time as we work with different customers. We work with a fitness app called the Moves app. It's another influencer app run by a woman named Madeline, and she has a really awesome relationship with her customer base. But over time, I guess you start to have a core audience of people that are diehards early on that sort of gravitate towards a brand. But I think as you move on, the reality is that there's probably less diehard people that are becoming customers. And I think, yeah, treating someone that's like an active customer starts to become more complex. And I think that there are people that have been around for ages, and there's people that have been around just for a year, and their initial kind of experience with the app is drastically different. So yeah, they respond differently to new sort of programs. Some people love the old school programs. Other people are more interested in trying new things. So we're just trying to figure out ways constantly to reevaluate the audience and figure out new ways to offer different things that might be more personalized. And yeah, just kind of be realistic that not everyone is going to be the same, active customer, for example. And you could probably, apply that to new customers or people that have churned and trying to figure out new ways to get them reactivated. But yeah, we're definitely always playing around with that, and that's something that we try and optimize regularly.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. So definitely when we look at segmentation, it's like the first step to personalization, and then it's linked to driving loyalty and then also retention. So onboarding, engagement, and retention. And how do you create campaigns for customers that turn back? How do you bring them back to the conversation? And then how do you personalize the customer journey for each and every user based on their preferences? And Baris, Yarina, have you seen something similar? What's your approach to segmentation?
Yeah, I think that one great approach to segmentation is using dynamic tags that are constantly being updated based on the player activity and preferences within the product. For our case, it's the game. And that way we can identify what the player engages with the most and create segments according to that. And on the other hand, we can identify what he least engages with, and we would know that the push notification that we talk about something that the player engages with the list won't deliver value for that player, so we can exclude him from receiving that push. It's not only including players, it's also excluding players that we know it's relevant for them.
Yeah, definitely. So we have the relevance here, and there are different ways we can track the user behaviors. Like one of them definitely is tagging. We also have events, which are more dynamic. But as you mentioned, knowing preferences of the user and being relevant at the right moments, it's what's the most important. And Barish, what has your experience been with segmentation?
Mm. And it's similar to Yarin, I think, because we use quite like dynamic we use dynamic segments, and every day we update the segment, so we send new data, and we have quite a lot of tags in it that kind of define the user. Like, are they a pair? Where are they in the game? What was the last thing they did? And things like that. It can get like much more complicated, and but based on that, because our segments are dynamic, generally, we don't see it like getting expiring, because like users join a segment and then they kind of outgrow it, or they churn and go away. So either way, they kind of like move to a different segment. So we move users between segments based on their journey, and that has been like the most like impactful thing for us in terms of like targeting and making sure that we are sending the right and impactful messages to the users.
Thank you so much, Barish. And I love what you just said, not only relevant, but also impactful messages. So it brings us back to the AI model and filtering. So let's talk about AI more broadly, as it was one of the biggest, elements of the report as well. So David, I'll start with you this one. Where do you see teams today on that spectrum between experimenting with AI and actually using it in a meaningful or, as Barish said, impactful way? And where has it made things easier versus where it feels more like a hype at the moment?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's changed our agency quite a bit. I think we've shifted from being a marketing agency to, yeah, being more of like a general tech solutions consultancy. We don't really, yeah, silo ourselves into a marketing function anymore. I think we are just as much like product managers or engineers as we are marketers at this point. We are, yeah, building full software solutions now to that are, yeah, built pretty much entirely using AI at this point. And we're able to apply that to a lot of our marketing channels. We're also able to seamlessly merge our marketing efforts into product experiences. And I would say, yeah, like a lot of our experimentation is done. We're able to cast a much wider net and test a lot more different variants and figure out where our human limited amount of time should be actually spent in adding the most value for our clients. And I think, yeah, that sort of like ebb and flow of figuring out how we can apply AI so that we can be a more efficient as humans, I think is how we're trying to use that as a tool. And yeah, I definitely don't think it's as useful as like building full copy and creative, for example. I think it should be more so used as like a signal or just like something that supercharges some of your efforts, but it can't be like fully depended on, I think, as like a marketing function entirely. And I think we still need, yeah, very much so like human touch to everything, or else, yeah, I think it comes off very disingenuous when you start to feel too much, yeah, AI coming at you as a customer.
Yeah, definitely. There is this balancing act that we're all embracing, how we can use AI to amplify, as you said, the effect without losing the human touch and the connection that we have developed with the brand. And Yarin, Boris, how are you seeing AI and how teams are embracing it?
We are trying to utilize it in like a few different areas. Like one part is like the artwork, for example. We kind of generate a lot of art, but some art maybe sometimes we need like a bit of like adjustment or something like that, where it's much easier to get the AI to do like move something around or something like that. So we are using quite a lot there, and also like messaging side, yeah, like David said, like we kind of get ideas from it, but then we kind of iterate on it like on our end. Another part we kind of like started using it a bit, that is like a bit like looking at the localization side. We already localize a lot of stuff, like, but we send it like we used to send it to like a translation agency. We would like it would take like probably like 2 weeks or so. Now if we want to test something like very quick and like fast, that's like we kind of like localize through AI and like make sure that everything like sounds okay, and then send out some things. And on top of that, we are also looking at like a bit more on the automation side, like more about like the reporting, like pulling the data in and then like analyzing the data and giving us some feedbacks or like some alerts based on like the data. So like it's more about analyzing and then sending us feedback rather than us going into and spending time looking at all the push notifications and stuff.
Awesome, thank you. And Yarin, what's
Yeah.
your take on?
So I really love the idea of using AI, and both in the sense of the content of the push notifications and also the attached graphic we use to send. Because if we use the same variety of content, the player might develop like some sort of blindness to it because he sees the same message type or the same text over and over again, and at some point he will surely ignore it. And one way to mitigate it is to create a larger variety. And it's either you hire a full-time copywriter and a graphic artist in order to create this variety, or you can use AI tools to enhance, but just make sure there's a human somewhere along the funnel to make sure it stays relevant, it doesn't lose the context. Also, it might be quite risky in localizing. So if you don't know what you're reading, you don't know how it relates to what you're trying to say.
Yeah, thank you so much, Irene. And definitely localization and using AI to communicate in languages that we might not be familiar with has been something that has been coming up in conversations with brands as well. So to wrap us up with the panel, as I would love to leave some time for questions that are coming in our chat from the audience. I have one final question for you. And if you had to bet on one thing that will matter most for the engagement over the next 12 months, what would it be? And Yarin, I have you on, so we can start with you.
I have to get back to you on this one.
Okay, so I will volunteer David.
All right. I mean, I think probably everyone has heard like personalization over and over at this point. But I think we finally have tools now to like make that a reality and scale personalization. I think we're, at least as an agency, able to build, uh, just ways to collect way more data, way more quickly, and then sort of enable that across all these different channels. So I think, yeah, just the way that you are treating each individual customer, I think is going to be how you, yeah, take advantage of your the future of your business. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm focusing a lot of our resources right now.
Thank you so much, David. So maybe we can go to Parish next.
Yeah. Actually, I was going to say something similar, so but to customization, but like I think like technology changes quite fast, right? But human nature and like how we behave doesn't change as fast, so it takes much longer for us to adapt to it. And at the end of the day, like what we try to do is like build a relationship with the user. And as we move forward, I think we will start getting more efficient on building that relationship. At And the relationship is about first providing them value and earning trust, and then after that, kind of becoming like a place to go, a place to spend their time, because everybody has limited time, especially like in our current day and age. So it's a privilege to like have people come to our game and spend their time, spend like an afternoon there. So we try to make sure that we like show them that we understand the value of that. And I think to do that, like David said, customizing the journey, making sure that they are getting what they want rather than a generic message. So personalization, and it will become much easier, I think, too, with AI and like being able to create much more in terms of both push notifications and also in-app messages and an automation side. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Barish. So I love this element that we keep bringing up as a group here, which is building trust, staying relevant, but also earning the attention of the user. So time is a scarce commodity that we have. So how do we encourage users to choose to spend their time with us? And personalization and using AI to orchestrate and stay relevant is definitely something that opens new opportunities for improving that engagement. And Yarin, do you have any final uh, thoughts that you would like to share with everyone who's watching us?
No, I really couldn't agree more with what Barish and David said, and like I have nothing more to add to that.
Thank you so much. So now I'm going to start pulling a few questions from the Q&A, and if you haven't added yours, feel free to drop in now. So the first question we got from our audience is, we talk a lot about relevance and personalization. So how do you build relevance? And who would like to start?
Yeah, I guess I can go first. Um, Mentioned a bit of this, but basically, what we do is like we send specific messages to the users at specific times, like in their journey as well. So if it's a new user, we don't talk about something that they will unlock in like 2 months or 3 months. We just talk about, okay, here is a tip for you. Here is like a gift that you can get. And then as users continue their journey, in order to be relevant, we kind of look at what part of the game they spend their time on, what part of the game they engage with the most, and then communicate around that part. If that part is, for example, levels, and if they run out of energy, then we'll say, "Oh, your energy is refilled. Come play." But if they look at something else, and if there's like a like different currency that refills, then we say something like we say that, okay, on that section, you can come and play now again, or you have something free that you can collect on that section. So we try to tailor the communication based on their engagement. That's how we try to be relevant and also provide value when we can through the communication.
Yeah, so what we see throughout the conversation is on one side capturing the customer, the user data, so then we can capture the areas that they might be interested in, and then provide value during the interactions that they have with the brand. Yarin, would you like to tell us about your ways of building relevance with your users?
Yeah, just from my experience, the one thing that is most relevant to all of the players is that they are primed to look for gifts, freebies, discounts, whatever thing that they like. This is the thing, the one thing that always provides on the promise and delivers value to the players. And we try to engage them using this, like let them know about free gifts that they can collect and like sale or whatever discounts or free stuff they can get through the game is always relevant and it's always engaging, and you should use it as much as possible in your platform or product.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yarin. And Barish?
I said what I was gonna
Oh,
say.
I could jump in. I could.
Okay, jump in, David.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess like the three, I think I mentioned maybe three brands, and I think every single one of them is led by an influencer. Yeah, the ski brand I mentioned is owned by a ski influencer, a food influencer, and a fitness influencer. And I think all three of those are like inherently relevant with their own customer base. I think I'm learning a lot from that space, and I think the transparency that they give to their audience is really interesting to me. And I think a lot of brands could learn from that, and just yeah, sort of exposing how the product is made or expose more about why things are the way they are, I think is something that's really interesting to communicate. So yeah, we've been trying to lean into that as much as we can, and also like just provide a way for customers to give feedback, like using in-app messages for really simple surveys, for example, just to get a quick signal, and then just kind of flip that back on the customer to let them know we're listening. I think those are all ways that we stay relevant. And yeah, and I guess like I see questions about like early onboarding and things like that. I think just letting people know that you're listening as early as you possibly can, I think is a really great way to yeah, feel relevant and yeah, start to build that relationship with the customer that feels yeah, two-way.
Yeah, definitely. And as we have seen, the communications are moving to this conversational model. So instead of us blasting messages or even like personalizing them based on segments, we're moving to this two-way communication that, for example, RCS is unlocking where you can stay relevant and communicate with your brands without even um, going to in-app or any other channels. So another question that we have, how does the panel use LLMs to target and attract? Who would like to start here?
Um, well, I think we're using uh, LLMs like just to be able to query the data that we're already collecting on our customers to create much more like hyper targeted smaller segments that we can apply to like retargeting. We can apply to existing communication like own channels that we have, and then we can do that much more quickly than we would have been able to do otherwise. And pretty much anyone is enabled to do that or empowered to do that at this point. Um, so there's not as much of a back and forth with an engineer or a data scientist, or everyone is sort of empowered to be able to work across all of these different functions, and I think apply that to their specialty. So I think that's one of the ways that we're doing it is just using it to organize and activate data in ways that are much more powerful than I've ever seen before.
Thank you so much, David. Yarin, Boris, would you like to add anything here, or shall we move to the next question?
Yeah, as it ties to what I previously said, that
Uh,
obviously the lowest hanging fruit is to use it to in order to create like the copy and the messaging, and it really helps to alleviate and take some of the operational load off when you can rely on LLM in order to provide like rich and diverse content to attract and keep players engaged. That is really one of the best users we currently put for AI.
Perfect. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much to our panelists, Barish, Yarin, David. Really appreciate you sharing your perspectives, and it was such a pleasure to have you here with us today. And thank you all for joining and great questions. Before we close, I would encourage you to download the full report 2026 State of Customer Engagement. We have been getting some questions around AI and findings, so please scan the QR code and everything that we touched on today, the benchmarks, trends, and examples are covered in more depth so you can explore. And you can always contact us at OneSignal and we'll be happy to dive deeper in your AI or engagement strategy. And from all of us at One Signal, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.